My name is Lean Tran Layton, and I'm a practicing immigration attorney in the United States. And I'm an immigrant myself. Throughout my life and career, I've had the privilege of meeting people from all over the world who have immigrated to the United States. And I've heard some amazing stories, and I want you to hear them too. These stories will make you feel a range of emotions, but most of all, I hope you will be left feeling inspired. Welcome to the Immigrant Voice. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, share it with others and leave us a comment or review wherever you're listening to it. Also, remember to subscribe so you can hear our upcoming episodes. So my next guest is somebody I've known for quite a long time. Like back in my college days when I used to work at Nordstrom, actually, I met her there. And now we're chatting. It's been a long time since we actually sat down and chatted. So I'm excited to talk to her and for her to share her story. So why don't you introduce who you are and what country you were born in?
So, first of all, I'm so honored to be invited to this. And yes, I know you for a long, long time, and I think so highly of you.
Thank you.
And I'm so proud of everything you have gone through and who you are. My name is Hilde, and I was born in Venezuela, in the main city, which is Caracas, but I was raised in a German colony.
So a German colony in Venezuela?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. So how did that happen?
So my mother is from Germany and my dad's from Venezuela. And they met, but my mom was very much that she wanted to keep the culture and in the language of being the first language for me. So that was the first language I spoke when I was little, was German. And so I went to a German school. I wear the German dresses. It was very interesting because I lived in Venezuela, but I was raised with German, a lot of the cultural background and all that stuff.
That's really interesting. I never knew that there was like a German, like you said, like a German colony in Venezuela. So how did that happen? Did that a lot of Germans, obviously they immigrated to Venezuela? Like how did that all happen?
So it was after World War II. A lot of, after Hitler, a lot of commanders and people they were part of, I guess, in the Hitler army. They went down, they escaped prosecution and they escaped and they went down to Argentina and they went to, I want to say Brazil, but mostly all went to Argentina. My grandfather moved to Venezuela. So I was the first, I guess, biracial, first mixed grandkid that he had. So it was very interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. So your mom was born in Venezuela. And so it sounds like her dad still very much instilled the German culture in your mom. Yes. And then obviously she then passed it to you.
Exactly. And I think one of the things too is that he was really into working with the very poor people in Venezuela too. So he would do a lot of work that was like, and he brought my mom and my aunts to see like the Amazon and work with the tribes and all that. But he very much, everyone knew they were the German little girls. And so that was, very much their culture and their traditions and everything was very much involved. They were raised with that. And it was such an honor. And that's the way I was raised. It was such a privilege and honor to be German and have that, so this day, my mom is very much, it's kind of like the Greek movie. What was it? Like
My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
The father says the Greeks did that. The Greeks, my mom is with the Germans. So I love my mom. But yeah, so everything the Germans did better.
So are there still a lot of Germans in Venezuela now?
They do. There's a colony. It's called Colonia Tovar. And it's beautiful. It's like you go to this little German town, like the homes. I mean, I have not been there since 1990. And I have not seen, but I have my mom's family lives down there still. My grandparents passed away, but my aunts and all that, but they live there and they speak German, and they travel to Germany because they are dual citizens. So they travel between Germany
So that's pretty cool. So you had the German influence and then the Venezuelan influence. And so with your mom and dad, obviously your mom spoke Spanish, right? And then you speak
Mm-hmm.
Spanish as well, along with German and English, which is so cool.
Amazing.
And so what was that like in the house with both, the Venezuelan culture and the German culture in one household?
It was very interesting because my dad understood more German than he spoke.
Hmm.
But I don't know. It was just it kind of you. I guess I didn't know better. I thought that everyone it was that way. Of course, there was tensions on cultural because my mom is a very independent German. So, but it was we mix all three. Well, we mix both languages, German and the Spanish. And then when we moved to Utah, and I had to learn English. My little sisters were 2 and 1 when they got here, so English was their first language. And so, but then we mix all three. So it was just interesting because we kind of mix all the traditions. And so I loved it because it was just kind of like the best of all three, or I guess both two that I grew up. But I was raised very much of being proud of being my German heritage and my Venezuelan heritage. But I think because my mother, that respect of the mom, there was more influence of the German heritage in my home. So.
So what do you remember about Venezuela, like living there? What was your childhood like?
I was brought here when I was a teenager. My parents took a lovely break between kids. And so I was 10 when I had my first sister. And then I was 12 when I had my parents had my second sister. So, so I remember, well, first of all, it's beautiful. And my parents, being part of the Caribbean, very much the ocean, the beach was like in our life. And so I remember those are like the warmest memories that I have. And so there's a lot of things I think that for safety and for trauma purposes, I guess I blocked them. But I was very privileged. My dad was a lawyer and a judge in Venezuela. And so I was raised going to private schools. I was raised with the privilege that my parents, both of them were well taken care. We had maids and we had chauffeurs and things like that. So it was interesting because I don't remember struggling, but I remember just I felt like I guess everyone had that way in some way. And I guess I didn't understand that I had that privilege until I moved here. And so, but it was. I mean, I used to, I know it sounds funny, but I used to go and watch Menudo practice, because my dad's cousin was friends with the manager of Menudo. So I remember going to Ricky Martin's goodbye party of Menudo. So it's just
That's cool.
So it was like this privilege that I didn't understand. And so being the only child for a long time, I was spoiled that way. And so until we moved here, I guess I didn't realize really what it was, struggle. And it was very interesting because I even remember my private school, we have mandatory English classes. And my teacher, I failed the class, and my teacher was like, well, you need to learn English and and I just remember saying to her, well, I'll just hire someone to interpret for me. But that was the privilege that I had, right, as a kid, and I just thought that way. And but I think it was just those things that you just had that privilege. And I remember the night that and I don't know if I use the word escape, but because we left without anyone knowing in the middle of the night, escaping. I guess it was. Yeah. Because my dad was given 48 hours to leave the country, and we left everything. We had nothing, only one suitcase. And I remember my mom told me to look at in Caracas, in the main city, there's like this beautiful mountains, kind of similar to Utah, I guess. And so I just remember my mom told me to see them, and it may be the last time I ever see them again. And I remember like that stuck in my head. And I remember being like, we didn't even, I don't know how to describe it, but like, the movie the music of what's it called? The sound music?
Sound of Music?
Sound of Music, like them leaving in the middle of the, like that was kind of, and they pushing, not turning on the car so no one knew they were leaving or anything like that. And so that to me, that was just kind of something that stuck in my head. And so, and within 48 hours, I guess, after when we arrived to United States, like my whole life went from privilege, anything I wanted, to we had to look where we could eat or what we could eat. And
wow. Okay, so we have to go back to this leaving in 48 hours. So I need to know what led up to that. So what happened? Like what was it that made you guys have to do that?
There's a lot of taboo. Well, my dad wasn't I don't know if I want to say the word honest, but he was just not very straightforward with me and my mom and my, what really happened in life. And he has passed at this point. When my dad was in Venezuela, and he was a judge, and he was very much into politics, and he owned magazines, and he posted something in one of his magazines that what the country, or I guess the president at that time, or the politicians were doing with the money, and gave it to the poor people. And poor people came down from like the barrios, like the poor areas with machetes and all that stuff. And so I remember kind of like we were like, it was like, I guess like a civil war in that way. And so allegedly what I was told was that it was because of what my dad did with the magazine and shared it and told people. I don't know the reasoning of why he was given 48 hours. He kind of said, we'll be gone, we'll be dead. And so within hours, I remember my dad kind of just like saying, we're leaving. And I remember putting stuff in boxes, which I never got back, because I guess after we left, people came in and destroyed our home and stole everything. And we have nothing. I have nothing on my childhood.
Wow.
So I don't know exactly why. All I know is that story. And I know that, and I knew that he was, that he was part of the politics and all the stuff that was going on at that time. Because I remember falling asleep in his classes. He was also professor at the university over there, or teaching law. And I would fall asleep, and then I would fall asleep in his courtroom when he had the court. And so I grew up being in a courtroom. So I always tease that I love courtrooms because it feels like home.
So just so I understand this correctly, so he had published something in one of his magazines that was controversial. And was it something that was essentially like exposing the government, like corruption in the government?
Allegedly, that's what it was. So.
Okay, I see. He does that, and then obviously somebody tells him you have 48 hours to leave. How old were you at that time?
I was 13, 14 years old. So it was such a hard thing, because it was like you're in that age of, and like my two sisters, so one was a 1 year old at that time, and my other one was 2 years old. So we left, and my sister had, and we had our own maid, and I remember crying because I love our maid, and our chauffeur. And I just I tell people it's kind of like, it's like a movie, and it feels like that sometimes, like that was another life that I had.
That's so crazy. So your dad's like, we have to leave, and then you guys left in the middle of the night, right? And so you said that you didn't turn on, like your dad didn't turn on the car, like you guys just kind of pushed it.
So I blocked some parts of it, but I remember really quietly, we didn't want people to know that we were leaving. We had only one suitcase, and that was it, I think. And he also didn't want to alarm them that we were truly leaving, because it was kind of like I guess low down, or I guess on
the down low.
Okay. And so he didn't even take all the money out of the account either, or anything. So what I recalled, and I may, it was only $500 that my dad brought. I mean, and that number stuck in my head. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he did more, and the suitcase. And so my dad had a family member here. And so that's when we chose to come to Utah. But I remember stopping in New York City, and I guess in my head, I was like, well, why don't we stop in like nice state? You know what I mean? Like, I guess to me, it was like in that time because of what I've seen in movies and stuff about United States, right? So like LA, Hollywood, and my dad chose to come here because of his family member. And so I just thought that was interesting. But I think also too, he was doing it because I didn't think that people assumed that we would come to Utah either. So family member, I lived in their basement while I went to school, and I couldn't speak English. I remember having like a little dictionary. And so I was even separated throughout the week from my parents for that. But it was very interesting. It was very hard time. And I don't remember anything about immigration. That was not even a conversation in our home because we did come in a tourist visa, I guess. So we came legally at that time,
right.
But we overstay I don't remember that even being a conversation. My dad was like, we're fine. And then a few months later, I may be wrong on my times, like we moved into our own place and my dad was working for McDonald's, cleaning restrooms.
Wow.
From someone like that to that, but he couldn't speak English either. So, and then I remember my mom picking up like whatever was extra food in the garbages at McDonald's, and that was her food. And then I started babysitting because my baby sisters needed milk. And so I couldn't even speak English, but I will babysit others so I can make money to buy milk for my sisters. So you think of those things,
Yeah.
So I remember that being like such a like traumatic time in my life, and I wanted it because I was like from everything to nothing in hours. So
wow, that's I mean, that had to have been such a traumatic thing. So did you fly to the US? You flew
to the US,
like from Venezuela. You flew. Okay, so what was the first thing when you landed in the States? Like, what was the first thing that you thought about it?
Well, the first place that we landed was New York. And I remember we're seeing the flag, and I don't remember seeing anything. Now I know what, and I didn't even understood like where we were at or anything like that because I couldn't understand English at all. See, I should have listened to that teacher. So it was a flag that it was just very interesting, and to me it was just kind of like wow, like in the movies, because I love watching American movies, and so I felt like so that was impactful. So every time I see that flag, it just brings me back to the moment looking at it from the mirror of the plane.
What kind of emotions were you feeling at that time?
I was scared. I was so scared because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
And I guess in the back of my head, I guess when my mom told me maybe the last time when we left Venezuela, that I would see, I guess I always a hope we will go back, But I was excited too because it was United States, and the way I was raised, United States was like you wanted to be in United States, like life will be so much better in United States. But I think that, then it was just really the struggle. Like I always say, and you hear that from immigrants, you have this hope and you have this wish, and then life is just so much harder. So
So did you guys stay in New York for a long time, or was it just where you landed?
It was, I think it was hours. And, we were changing planes. And then I guess we stopped in Denver first. We didn't understand that was Denver. So we thought that was Salt Lake City, Utah. And then we learned later that we came in the wrong plane, and then we came to Utah. But so it seems like it was like a whole day, like 24 hours, because it was a long flight.
Right. Yeah. So when you came to Utah, where did you guys live?
So we lived in the basement of my dad's family member. And, so us five, and in this room, in one room. And I remember just coming from everything to nothing. It was very interesting. And then, but there was tension, and I think that family member also, I think they were concerned for their safety because of my dad leaving. So we only stayed there for like maybe a month or two. And then we got our own apartment, but we didn't even have beds. We slept in the floor. Well, my sisters, it's interesting because I just had this conversation maybe like less than a month ago with my middle sister. And she says she remembers me sleeping in the floor while they slept in the bed. So I wanted to make sure my little sisters had a bed. And so, but I remember we were so excited when there was like something else to eat other than rice because that was all we could afford.
Mm-hmm. That has to be so crazy to go through. Mm-hmm. Like you said, going from having pretty much whatever you wanted to sleeping on the floor in a small room in a basement. And so what do you remember about like what was like the dynamic of your family at the time? Like, did you hear were your parents arguing a lot? Like, what were the things that your family what were they going through at the time?
Yeah, so I remember I had to put, I became like the second mom to my sisters because my parents had to work a lot. And so I would spend a lot of the time babysitting my sisters. So I didn't have the normal life of, I guess, high school or junior high or anything like that because I would take care of my sisters in the morning. My parents left like 4 a.m., I remember. Wow. And then I would take care of them, get them ready. I would walk them to their childcare, and then I will walk to my junior high. And then I will leave junior high and I will walk to pick up my sisters and then take care of them. And so by the time when my parents got home, and so help with dinners. I don't remember being arguments. I remember there was a lot of sadness from my mom because, her life had never been easy, but I think that at least she knew that she had family, she had support, she could go shopping whenever she wanted to. Like she had a life, and now she's working at McDonald's, not being able to give us what I guess parents, you want to give your kids what they want. And so I started working really early. At 15 years old, I started working as a clown for Hardee's. So I could bring extra money and I could buy my sisters like school supplies and I could buy my sisters ice cream and little things that we couldn't. So I think that was hard, but I remember my parents being so, when they had a little bit of money, we would go and eat. It was like a big thing. So savings wasn't even a conversation at my home. And I think it was too for them, like, you're survival. And so, but we didn't talk about immigration, which was crazy. I think about it now, but I think it was my dad protecting us of knowing. But when we had to fill out forms or anything like that, like he had to fill it out. I had to interpret for my dad and my mom a lot. My mom did know some English because in the German school, it was like learned from England. But back in the early 90s in Utah, someone speaking English like England sounded really weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just very interesting. I remember sadness from my mom of wanting to give us more than we had.
Yeah. And what about your dad? I mean, like you had mentioned earlier, he was a judge, he was a professor, he was an intellectual, and then he came to the States and he was working at McDonald's cleaning bathrooms. Yeah. Did he ever talk about that with you at all?
Well, I will tell you. So one day, I was walking because my junior high was next to the McDonald's where my dad and my mom work at. And I remember one day I went in my lunchtime to see my dad. I wanted to see my dad. And I remember people screaming at my dad and this person throwing all this garbage at my dad and my dad picking it up and cleaning it. It was such a hard thing. And I remember telling my, like in my head thinking, he was a judge. He was like all this. My dad's an intelligent individual. He has so much education and you're treating him like nothing.
Right.
And I remember that being so sad. And I could see the sadness in my dad's side, but he always was like, oh, I'm going to be the manager. And I remember him looking into maybe like becoming an attorney, and he couldn't really speak. He passed away. He still had a hard time. He spoke better English, but he still had a hard time learning it. It was hard. So when my dad would do something like he became like a manager for maintenance, and I remember that was like huge thing, and it was like a celebration for us.
Yeah.
And he was so proud that he was a manager And so when he would like fix something or knew something in the playgrounds at McDonald's, then he would take us. I'm sure he never told me that how sad he was. He did tell me like he would bring the memories of like both of my parents would talk about like how they had maids, and they would talk about being able just to fly anywhere they wanted to, and they would talk about like or beach, like we had a like a condo in a resort that was by the beach, and so we talk of it, we would memorize, we would think of those things. But they were very much in, my mom was very much in conversations with her sisters. So my aunts will send us boxes sometimes with little things. And I remember just, that was like the best thing ever. And getting something that it was not secondhand because we couldn't afford nothing. So it was like, oh, I remember that. It was like Christmas. So
right. Yeah, that must have been nice to get those things.
Yeah.
Was there anything that your parents would say to you, like, okay, we're in America now, and this is how we have to be, and you need to act this way so that people don't look down on you? Like, were there ever any conversations like that?
There was very much the keeping the proud of who you are, but also very much they wanted me to speak more English, not so much Spanish or German, because they want to make sure that we were able to. School was very important for them. And I think also my dad coming from academia, and he wanted us to make something ourselves. And of course, there was like this driving of being better and having more stuff, you know, like, so that was important. But I had to help financially. So I had to pay rent. I had to help with whatever my sisters didn't have. I had to go and do it. And so I don't know, it was just very interesting because I was culturally, I couldn't move out and have like go to college or anything like that. Now I know why more. But at that time was like, that was this guilt trip of you have to be home and you have to take care of your sisters and your parents. So it was like this, I don't know. It was just a weird.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. And we could not talk about immigration at all. We couldn't call law enforcement. We couldn't call, my dad did not want any
authority.
Like, I mean, he didn't want also any, what's the word, like attention to our home. So we were very like hush in a lot of things because he didn't want that. And now I know better because we were not documented at that time. But
when did you know that your immigration status was actually a big deal?
So it was after I left my ex-husband. So I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And that was a very shameful thing for me to come out and say that was happening to me and all these things. And then my dad kind of brought it to me and he's like, hey, you can fix your papers. And I remember just kind of like, what? You know what I mean? Like it was just, so he's the one that told me about VAWA. And then I went to immigration. He had set up an immigration appointment for me and everything like that. And so I am VAWA recipient. And so, but it was very interesting that's when I learned. And I think about like, when I didn't ask, but you didn't ask those questions. Like there's a respect to your parents that you don't ask those stuff. I was told I couldn't go to college because, and I remember my dad, like I would give him the papers to fill out so I could go to college. And he was like, oh, I'll fill them out later. I'll fill them out after. And then, but it was not, now I know why.
Right.
But it was those things that it was just like, and you didn't ask because it was like a respect. Your parents knew better. Like,
so did you know that you didn't have legal status in the U.S.?
No.
Okay.
At that point, I find out, and of course, there was like this fear because I'm going through this divorce with my ex. Well, at that time, I just left, and so I had this fear that my ex was going to take my kids now. Like I had all these like emotions. Just I remember you're going through this like leaving a domestic violence situation, and now like I've figured all this out and. Kind of like your life has been a lie in a weird way. So you're kind of like, oh my gosh, it was like, what do I do at that time? And so, and when I asked him about my sisters, he's like, oh, your sisters are fine. And I believe that. Until later I found out my sisters were not okay either.
Right.
So
Right. I
yeah.
see.
But once
Yeah.
again, and I know that like I kicked myself. I'm like, why didn't I question? But it was that respect.
For the listeners, Hilde mentioned VAWA. So it's the Violence Against Women Act. And it's a law that was passed that essentially one of the things that it does is it gives immigration benefits to people who have been victims of domestic violence. And usually that leads to a path of eventually getting a green card. So that's what she's referring to.
Mm-hmm.
So because I work with a lot of VAWA and U visa clients. And so I know that just the relationship itself is already having to go through all of that. It's already such an emotional thing. And then you have to deal with the immigration part of it, which is an added stressor by itself. And so what do you remember about going through the immigration process?
So it was when I was, like I said, I had just left my ex-husband. I had protective order. It was a pretty bad case. And I remember like having to turn in papers and pictures and, like, I'm like, yeah, we got married. We had babies. Like in my head, I wasn't, cause you had to prove that you didn't, I'm like, I didn't know, like, so it was a very interesting that part. And then I remember when I got the paper, when I got my green card or like the temporary card that you got first and then you get like another one. I remember this like breathing moment. Like it was like this relaxation because I was in such a tension and it wasn't like a fully because I was still like then I was a single mom working 2 jobs, taking care of my babies and surviving. But it was at the time was like, now at least I know that they're not going to take me away from my babies. And that was like such an important thing because I felt like it was just like empowering at that moment too. So I remember when I had to like show our wedding invitation and like I had to show all these things, like it happened and we had 2 babies and all this stuff. And but it was kind of like I didn't want him to know either because it was like really scary because like he was just he's such a not nice person, of course. He tried killing me, so it was kind of like very harsh. So
yeah. What do you think was the hardest part about having to go through the immigration stuff?
I think it was like I think I had that fear that I was just not that they could say no and then they were going to send me back and be separated from my kids. And it was such I didn't want him to have them. I didn't because the only way that I felt that I could protect them was with me because he would come after the kids when I was with him and then I would stop and I will let him do this stuff to me instead of them. And I think that was a huge thing that someone had that power and was like, this is why I love being here. I don't want to live here. I wish I had known better. Like if I had known like when I was young, and I think that's one of the things I have heard from a lot of the DACA students, or people that have gone through DACA, that is like, I wish that I was born here. Like I wish I didn't have to go through all that. I was a 4.0 student. Like I was like, I wanted to be a good person. I didn't get in trouble. Like,
yeah. A lot of times with the immigration process, it's just so stressful for people.
It is.
And then, like I said, you add on when you're dealing with domestic violence and things like that, that in itself. And so that's already a traumatic experience. And with VAWA applications, with visa applications, when they're based on domestic violence, you also have to provide an affidavit to immigration explaining everything you went through. So that essentially re-traumatizes people because then they have to think about all of the stuff they went through again and write it down for immigration. And that, I know that's really hard. And for me,
it was,
and I feel like for my clients, that's usually the last thing they give me is their affidavit because they can't bring themselves to write about it because it's just, they don't want to think about it anymore.
Yeah. And it was hard to be able to, and people having to tell your character too, because I had to have character letters. Like, wow, this is just really hard that you have to kind of do that. But having to think about again of all you went through, that was hard. But I think in some weird blessing way. It was when I was going through all the protective order and divorce process too. So it was all very vivid at that time too. And I even thought about going back just because I have fears. What if I don't, because I didn't want him to have it. So yeah, there's like a lot of that I don't think that people realize, that there's not just a paper and they say, oh yeah, you can stay here. There's so much more to it. My head was everywhere at that time. I mean, there was days that I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids or how, if I had enough, me and my baby slept in one bed. And it was weird because it felt like I went back to when I came to United States. It felt like I had nothing again. And I didn't want no material things because I lost everything already in my life. Yeah. And material things meant nothing.
Right.
But I wanted my kids. It was my number one thing.
Yeah. How good did it feel when you did get your green card?
Oh my gosh. It was so amazing. Like, I think I said it previously, but I like slapped. It was just so lovely. And it was such a empowering thing because I knew that, I still had the fear that someone could say to me, well, you at that time was a green card, right? But I still had this fear that someone had the power to say to me, you don't stay here any longer. At that time, I already, when I had my green card, then I met my husband now. And so, and it was kind of empowering too, that I was now in a relationship that I could, it was like total honesty. And I was honest, but it was just kind of like a relaxation that even if you don't want to be with me, you can't kick me out. So, but then when I became a U.S. citizen, I cried. I cried because I love this country. And I'm very much of a social justice work in this country. And I have worked in that for so many years that I didn't want to lose all that.
I bet that was such a happy moment.
Yeah.
So you mentioned social justice work. So tell me what kind of work you do.
So I do work with victims of crime, domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault. And I've been doing this work for, my goodness, almost 16 years. I mean, that tells you you and I know each other.
I know, right?
But yeah, so I guess it was the empowerment of having that in the paper and being able to relate to walking the similar shoes to other individuals. I think that was I didn't want them to go through, because I didn't know there was shelters when I went through my domestic violence situation. I didn't know there was resources. I didn't know, and I just felt like, why wasn't I not be aware of this information? And I think that one of the things too was like, if I could save one person, and that's all I remember saying, I could save one person, or I can make their transitioning of their victimization better. That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, even when I got my protective order, I didn't really understood everything that was happening in the courts. And no one even sat down with me and explained to me what a protective order really meant. And I remember even my ex-husband following me after the court hearing, after protective order, to my apartment, to the apartment. And I didn't know that I had to call the police.
Yeah.
I didn't know those things because no one took the time to that. So it was very important for me, for people to know that they have rights, that they have a voice. And so that's what has been my work. So hopefully I've made a little change, even a tiny bit.
Oh, you have.
So yeah.
I love that you turned your experience, and it was a horrible experience, but I love that you turned it into something good, and that now you're able to help people. And because you've been in their shoes, I feel like you can empathize with them a lot more and know what they're going through. I hope
that I can.
Oh, for sure.
And I hope I can. And and I hope that, even just being able to have someone that can sit down and talk to you about, or can relate with you, that you're not alone, or, you have gone through that there's kind of like a little light. Of course, that, and everyone knows that there's no perfect and there's no promises 100%.
So that leads me to my next question, is that you've obviously been through a lot, right? You came here, totally different lifestyle. Then you had a relationship that just was not the type of relationship that you had imagined that you'd ever
Mm-mm.
be in. In some ways, you had a lot of quote unquote failures, in the sense that maybe you just had a lot of obstacles. Maybe that's a better way to put it, is that you had a lot of
Yeah.
obstacles, and maybe there were times when you felt like, oh man, I'm just failing, right? So what would you say is something that you saw as a failure or an obstacle, but it actually ended up setting you up for success later?
So that's kind of interesting because I feel like I'm learning every day, and I don't see myself a success. But I see myself like, like baby steps, like learning and making change. One thing I'm very, very proud of. So my little sister, not the baby one, but the middle one, she didn't know that she was also undocumented, and she was put in immigration camp. And so, of course, she called me, and I thought that she was fine. But when then we learned there wasn't fine, and we learned my dad had, I guess, I always say I don't want to believe that he did it in bad, but he did things that they were not correct legally. And so I knew he was a very smart individual, but at the same time, I think he was desperate, and I wish he had reached out for help, and I wish he knew where to reach out. And I think also too some of it could have been financial, because everything costs us so much money, and he didn't, have. I was able to sit down with, at that time, was Mayor Rocky Anderson, and Senator Hatch, and had Senator Hatch, he committed himself to bring back, it was called the Dream Act at that time, back in 2004, and it was because of my sister. So my sister was released from immigration camp. And the reason what is important to me is that year our baby sister had committed suicide. And that's when I worked with you.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
yeah, so it was that same year. So it was at the end of the year, and in my baby's sadly, there was so much tension culturally. There was so much. My little sister couldn't deal with it, and mental health. That's another conversation, but that was and culturally wasn't accepted having mental health issues. So I was not going to lose that year another sister. And I remember her calling me in tears from immigration camp and all this stuff, and I was desperate on what I was going to do to support her. Somehow I didn't care. I was going to knock on the doors, had Mayor Anderson at the time and Senator Hatch sit down, and they both agree. He brought back the Dream Act, and my sister was the poster child for the Dream Act at that time, and she's here. She became a U.S. citizen last year.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I know. and she works on making sure she goes and works on safety for school. So for school shootings, she goes and educates and prepares school teachers and school administration on how to prepare for, any danger in school. So she's a very educated. So I'm very proud of her. So I feel that was a success.
Yeah, definitely.
And I remember that when he brought it back, the Dream Act, that started again conversations and DACA and everything else. So hopefully from that, to me, it was a success. So yeah, so I think that's a success, and being here, and sadly my father was deported, but and he did take his own life after because of that. But so that wasn't good. Hopefully my kids and her kids will have a better life. And that's what we hope as immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Is to have that better life. And I want my children to be good citizens and love their country, and, and do all that, because we went through a lot to be here.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I have to say, you are so brave, so resilient, and I can't even imagine having to go through everything that you went through.
Oh, thank you.
And you took all of those, hard times, and you turned it into something where you're now helping people, and it is making a difference. So what do you think that going through all of that taught you?
I think that, I kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of this question because, so I have medical issues because of my victimization, and every day is a struggle to survive. And every day is a fight still. But I think, okay, so I've been through that, and I think the resilience of individuals when they have that hope, it is so. When you don't have hope anymore, it goes, and so I think that is that we're such a resilience. If you take someone's hope or that little gleam of hope, then you kind of have taken that, and that's something that I have learned from that. And I think I don't even learn, because some of it you just do it because you have no other choice, and someone told me one time, it's like, oh, well, you chose what you wanted or something like this, I guess, whatever religious beliefs you have and whatever. And I was like, what was I thinking? I want to be superwoman? What was I thinking? Because but I think that the way that I have learned is just that the hope and knowing that there's a tomorrow is important, and then just not giving up. And that's one thing that people tease me that I have like no shyness, but I don't. I have to survive, and I have no shyness. So I don't know if that answers the question, but to me, it's just being able to. And I know I'm kind of rambling on it, but it's just like that hope, and that there's always something better tomorrow, and you just hope that is. Sadly, there's been times in my life that I had the hope and didn't work out. But then I always had to kind of look at, people say, well, there was a learning moment from it. And at that moment, I don't see it. But then I kind of say, well, maybe this is my journey. And I don't think no one can take that from you, is that hope and that. And I think that's when you lose that, you have nothing.
Yeah. Do you ever miss Venezuela?
I miss my family. I miss the beach, the ocean. I always tease about it. When I see pictures, I start crying. Or I see videos. I smell the food, I cry. I know it's so funny, but because it was such a part of my life, and it was such a important life, and when I was in Venezuela, my life wasn't 100% rosy, beautiful. I was victimized and things like that, but it was something that I remember seeing my parents happy. Yeah. And I remember seeing my parents like peacefully and not struggling. And and moving to United States, we came us 5. And it's only me, my mom, and my sister. We have lost part of our life, and we were not able to go and see our family. So I missed that too. I have this fear of going back to Venezuela. I know it sounds really weird, but I think it was because it was so much of my dad putting in my head that if we went back, we will get harm, all the stuff. And that I have this fear, but not being able to bury your loved ones, not being able to go. But of course, right now with the political and everything that's happening, it's not safe anyways.
Yeah.
So, but I miss the beautiful and the people. And I love like the music and the culture.
Yeah.
Like everything was a party. Like Christmas was a party, and New Year's, everything was a party. And
yeah,
I do miss that. So
yeah. And that's what I was going to ask too, is like, what's like your favorite thing about the Venezuelan culture and the German culture?
So I think both of them have beautiful, I will say both of them, the foods, oh my gosh. Okay, so, but they're totally different too. But what I love, the German culture is like this, and both of them have this, like such a honor of being part of that culture. And I like that, because I want my kids to be proud of who they are. So I think it's the word more, is not honor, but proud.
Yeah.
I love both of the food. I prefer my Caribbean, merengue music than the German. It's a little, but no, what I miss in Venezuela too is there was like such a warmth from the people too, of caring about each other. And I think that growing up, you kind of took care of each other. And I really miss that. But also, of course, the beaches. Oh my goodness. Just the beautiful, like, I always tell my kids, and if you saw the sand, and if you saw the beaches, and you saw the water, and that just, it's like another movie. It's like another part of my life that it feels like a movie that it wasn't, so I miss those things. There's so much, I guess, that in every culture there's pros and cons, like good and bad, right? Like, and I just hope that I was able to bring the both cultures to my kids, and also my husband's from here, so and also bring part of his, but he's also comes from immigrant parents or grandparents from Germany, so I think he also part of that, but he wasn't raised as much with that culture. It's funny because things that I would do, he's like, oh, my mom used to do that. My grandma used to do that, but he wasn't passed on to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sad thing that I hope my kids don't lose is the culture and being proud of who they are.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that when I moved to the United States or Utah, and I know those people didn't know better, and I have to take it with a grain of salt, and I always want to think, but they didn't want to speak in Spanish or German. They would tell me they will hate me because they consider me Mexican no matter what. And I remember the first time that a teacher told me that I was, he goes, I hate all Mexicans.
Oh my gosh.
And you're going to get an F in my class. And I remember, like, maybe it made him mad, but I was excited because I had never met Mexican people. So I was like, oh, there's Mexican people here. I want to meet. So I think, and I was confused as a child too, because I was German citizen at that time and Venezuelan, and I wasn't, so I was very much, so maybe that made him mad that I didn't react the way he wanted me to react. But there was, at that moment, it was such a shame to speak a different language. So I just hope that we're knowing better and we recognize and we value and we're proud of who we are and how, and I will tell you, that's one of the things I love about Utah and United States is that we're such a diversity, and being raised in a cultural that was, German or Latina, and I was too dark for one culture and I was too white for another culture. Being here was like, I could be myself. And I think that's the thing that I love more about being here. And is that you have, of course there's political and all that, but truly you can be you own person. It may take a little bit and you may have to fight and you may have to, but there's still laws that are in place that in other countries, they don't have those.
Yeah, that's true. It's, people came to America for freedom. So I think it's something that we shouldn't take for granted.
Yeah. And, and of course, everyone has their own point of view, what politics and all that, but that respect and dignity is so important, of treating each other with that and, and valuing each other's. And that's what I love, that the people I have been able to meet in the United States and being I call them my extended family. But at the same time, I think it's something that we have to continue and be proud of. So.
Yeah. So my last question for you is, what is your proudest accomplishment here?
Wow. Other than my sister, I think that was a really good accomplishment.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I think it was being a single mom and not going back, which it was very easy to go back. And I think that's one of the accomplishments. And my babies, I call them my babies, but they're adults. They're always going to be my babies. That I tried to raise them in a healthy home, giving them a safe place. I think that was important. So I think I'm very proud of that, and raising them with the values and the social justice, and both of them being able to speak up. And both of my kids are, and they have given permission to say that, they're both transgender. And I'm proud of who they are, of being able to raise them and being the individuals and whatever their life will look like, partners, children, and whatever. But being able to proud of who they are and have a voice. And so, and I started a new foundation, which I think you know about it, but at helping cancer warriors, especially children and immigrant families that they're going through their cancer journey. So never thought that I would have my own, run a nonprofit to help others. So
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And you're such a survivor. Gosh, like I said, you went through so much, and I'm so proud of you for everything you've accomplished. You've done so much, and you do so much for the community. And I just love that you're a fighter. Like, keep fighting and keep going. And you are such a great asset to our community and to the people you help. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It means so much coming from you, and I think the world of you. So
thank you. Hilde.
Know that I'm always here. So whatever I can support you, I'm always here. And thank you. It means so much. And I'll keep fighting as much as they let me.
Yes, please do.
I adore you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilde.